Millionaire helps elderly stranger not knowing he's a retired Hollywood star. Welcome, dear viewers, to a tale that defies all expectation. In this riveting story, an unlikely bond forms between a wealthy philanthropist and an unsuspecting elderly stranger. Little does the millionaire know that his simple act of kindness will unravel an astonishing secret, one that will shake him to his core. Prepare for stirring drama, twists lurking at every corner, and moments that tug at your heart. Each paragraph bursts with suspense, ensuring you remain captivated until the final reveal. Let's begin this roller coaster of surprises where compassion meets fate and destinies collide in the most extraordinary way. Watch closely, for the unbelievable truth lies just beneath the surface. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Dempsey had never intended to become a millionaire. He was a humble man at heart, though life had granted him the type of wealth that opened every door and closed none. At 45, he was the owner of a booming tech startup that had revolutionized the way small businesses managed their finances. Late one winter evening, Reed found himself strolling through Beverly Hills, seeking solace from the clamor of corporate meetings and relentless calls. He breathed in the crisp air, longing for a meaningful encounter that would remind him of who he once was, a man who believed in the inherent goodness of others. Eager to spread kindness where he could, his desire for human connection was soon met in the most unexpected of ways. As he passed the opulent shops on Rodeo Drive, Reed noticed an elderly man crouched against a marble column beneath the warm glow of a street lamp. The man appeared frail, his clothes tattered, and barely enough to shield him from the chilly breeze. Pedestrians hurried by, oblivious to his plight, engrossed in their own affairs. Reed paused, his heart quickening with concern. Though his philanthropic work involved million-dollar donations and glamorous fundraisers at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, he rarely encountered true need right in front of his eyes. Reed approached cautiously, uncertain how the stranger would respond. The elderly man looked up, revealing gentle, albeit weary brown eyes. A tuft of silver hair peeked out from under a threadbare cap. Reed offered a warm smile and extended his hand. "Sir, do you need help?" he asked, softly, aware of the delicate line between assistance and intrusion. The old man nodded, his posture betraying both pride and desperation. With a tremor in his voice, he said, "I've lost my wallet. I can't pay for a meal. I just need a place to rest." Those simple words struck Reed's core like a gong. Without hesitation, Reed guided the elderly man to a nearby cafe. The neon sign flickered overhead, reminiscent of a distant memory. Inside, the comforting aroma of fresh coffee drifted through the air. Reed ordered a hot beverage and soup for his companion, who sipped gratefully, his trembling hands clinging to the warmth. Soft piano music played from hidden speakers, muffling the hum of conversation around them. Reed introduced himself, but the old man offered no name in return. Instead, he simply nodded in recognition, as though he preferred to remain an enigma. There was something about this man, something hidden behind his gentle eyes and polite manner. Reed sensed an undercurrent of elegance, as if this stranger had once known a very different life. His posture spoke of grace. His speech, though quiet, carried a refined accent. Reed found himself leaning closer, deeply curious but unwilling to press. After finishing the soup, the old man whispered his thanks and stood to leave. Reed gently insisted on paying for a cab ride or a hotel room, but the man refused, insisting he could manage. Eventually, the man relented to at least accepting bus fare, which Reed placed gently in his palm. That night, Reed couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the encounter in his head. He was haunted by the man's grateful eyes, the tremor in his voice, and the gnawing suspicion that there was more to his story than mere misfortune. Before drifting into a restless slumber, Reed resolved to find out who this man was, if only to offer more help. He consoled himself with the notion that he would search for the stranger in the vicinity the next day, or perhaps discover him again by chance. Morning arrived, bright and promising. Reed cancelled his usual schedule of meetings. It was a bold move, given his packed calendar, but something inside him urged him onward. He returned to the streets of Beverly Hills, scanning every corner for a glimpse of the old man. He stopped by the cafe, struck up conversations with the staff, and asked whether they had seen anyone matching the description. A waitress recalled someone who might fit, but she wasn't entirely sure. Dejected, Reed wandered the streets aimlessly. His phone buzzed with urgent texts and calls, demanding his attention, but he muted the device. Something more pressing called him his conscience, or perhaps destiny. Hours later, he finally spotted the old man near a narrow alley that opened onto a quieter stretch of the boulevard. He sat perched on a low step, staring at passing cars with an expression that was equal parts nostalgia and sorrow. Reed approached gently, as one might approach a frightened animal, raising his hand in greeting. The old man recognized Reed and gave him a thin smile. "Thank you for your kindness last night," he murmured, his voice quieter than before. Reed noticed fresh tears brimming in the man's eyes. A conversation sparked, each word gradually chipping away at the stranger's guarded demeanor. Eventually, the truth emerged in shaky fragments. The old man had once been someone of note, someone admired by millions, but time had changed his fortunes. Reed pressed gingerly for more details, but the old man deflected, a hint of shame coloring his cheeks. Moved by compassion, Reed offered the man a proper meal and a place to rest. This time, the old man allowed himself to be escorted. They ended up at a modest diner at the far end of Beverly Boulevard, known for its vintage decor and classic jukebox tunes. Over plates of steaming pancakes and sausages, the old man finally revealed his name, Maxwell Compton. The very mention of the name rang a distant bell in Reed's mind, though he couldn't place why. Maxwell talked in brief bits about his youth, hinting that he had worked in the film industry many decades ago, but declining to offer specifics. Reed was intrigued. He listened attentively, absorbing each reluctant confession, while Maxwell stared at his plate as if attempting to vanish into the patterns of syrup. Reed insisted on renting a small room for Maxwell in a quiet residential motel, paying for a couple of weeks so the old man could regain his footing. Maxwell resisted at first, but soon realized he had little choice, given his circumstances. Reluctantly he agreed, his eyes flickering with gratitude and something else, perhaps recognition, of Reed's unwavering kindness. As the days passed, Reed visited Maxwell regularly, bringing groceries and listening to him recount stories in vague terms. Maxwell spoke of red carpets, enormous sets, and adoring fans. He described a golden era that glimmered with opportunities, referencing famous studios like Paramount Pictures in passing. Reed's curiosity intensified. One evening, Reed decided to do some research. He typed Maxwell Compton's name into a search engine, rummaging through old newspaper archives, film credits, and Hollywood memorabilia sites. His discovery rocked him to the core. In an article dating back 50 years, Maxwell Compton had been a household name, lauded for roles in various blockbuster films. His photograph revealed a dashing leading man, smiling confidently at the camera beside directors and co-stars of the era. He had once lit up screens across America, mesmerizing audiences with his suave charm. Yet, for reasons unclear, Maxwell vanished from the public eye as swiftly as he had entered it. One rumor suggested he had refused to bend to certain studio demands. Another speculated an unfortunate scandal overshadowed him. Whatever the truth, Maxwell's once glorious career had faded into oblivion. The revelation filled Reed with equal parts awe and sorrow. How had such a beloved star ended up alone and penniless on the streets of Beverly Hills? Reed felt compelled to investigate further, but he also recognized Maxwell's guarded nature. Perhaps Maxwell carried guilt or a painful secret, the weight of which he could not yet share. Reed decided to proceed delicately. He continued visiting Maxwell, building trust through patient listening and unwavering kindness, never once betraying that he had learned the truth on his own. Slowly, Maxwell opened up. He confided that he had once been on top of the world, but a series of misfortunes had chipped away at everything he held dear: his family, his wealth, and his reputation. To Reed's horror, Maxwell recalled being swindled by a crooked accountant who had siphoned away his substantial savings. Desperate to keep afloat, Maxwell sold off properties and memorabilia, eventually burning through every resource he had. As Hollywood moved on to new faces, Maxwell found himself isolated and unable to secure a fresh start. Yet Maxwell refused to let bitterness define him. His resilience astounded Reed, who observed glimpses of the star's once famous charisma. Maxwell's ability to find a measure of joy in small gestures, a shared laugh over a silly joke, a comfortable pair of slippers, or a warm cup of tea struck Reed deeply. Over time, Reed's admiration for Maxwell transformed into genuine friendship. The two became inseparable, each giving what he could. Reed offered financial support. Maxwell offered the sort of wisdom that can only be born from a life of triumphs and tragedies. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Reed's corporate empire began showing cracks in his absence. Investors worried about his sudden lack of engagement. Stock prices wavered. Rivals scented vulnerability. Reed's assistant bombarded him with urgent messages, cautioning him that he risked losing everything he'd built. Yet Reed felt compelled to push forward, convinced that his bond with Maxwell was not a random whim but a fate-laced encounter. Still, the rumblings of unrest in Reed's professional sphere loomed like thunderclouds on the horizon. One fateful afternoon, a crisis erupted at Reed's company. A major data breach threatened to compromise thousands of client accounts, sending the entire operation into panic mode. Reed rushed back to the office, where the staff greeted him with a mixture of relief and frustration. Days turned into nights, as Reed worked tirelessly with his security team to patch vulnerabilities and reassure clients. In his exhaustion, he nearly forgot about Maxwell, though a pang of guilt gnawed at him every time he glanced at his phone. During that chaotic week, Maxwell, left to his own devices at the motel, faced a terrifying situation. A shady figure from Maxwell's past, someone who had once exploited his fame, found him after years of searching. This person, Clyde Bellingham, was rumored to have orchestrated the downfall of more than one unsuspecting Hollywood legend, cunningly draining them of funds. Clyde demanded money from Maxwell, threatening to reveal unflattering secrets about him if he did not comply. Maxwell, lacking resources, was in dire straits. Fear gnawed at him, but he attempted to stand his ground, refusing to yield to extortion. The tension mounted. Maxwell, tormented by dread, no longer felt safe in his cramped motel room. Finally, in desperation, he tried to contact Reed, but discovered that Reed's phone was set to silent, swamped by crisis-related calls. With nowhere else to turn, Maxwell resolved to confront Clyde directly, believing that with no money left to steal, he was invulnerable. Late one night, Maxwell crept out of the motel, determined to meet Clyde on a deserted street corner. The moon shone overhead like a single spotlight, illuminating his trembling steps. At that very moment, Reed finally listened to Maxwell's frantic voicemail, the urgency in his friend's voice chilling him to the bone. Realizing that Maxwell was in trouble, Reed abandoned the pile of contracts he had been sifting through and rushed out of his office. Driving through the star-studded streets of Los Angeles at breakneck speed, he searched in desperation for any sign of his friend. His GPS pinged repeatedly as he raced along Sunset Boulevard, weaving through late-night traffic, heart pounding with dread. As he turned onto a quieter side street, he spotted two silhouettes bathed in moonlight. Before Reed could leave his car, a moment of recollection swept through him. He remembered an article he had read while researching Maxwell's past, mentioning a run-in with a certain fixer who haunted the edges of Hollywood. Could Clyde Bellingham be the same man? Fear choked him, though not for himself. Reed worried about Maxwell, fragile and unprotected against someone who thrived on intimidation. Summoning all his nerve, he flung the car door open and stepped onto the pavement, determined to protect the friend who had awakened a deeper purpose within him. Clyde stood waiting, a malicious grin etched across his features. His voice dripped with the confidence of a man who had ruined lives before. Maxwell squared his shoulders, summoning remnants of the courage he once displayed on screen. He insisted he had nothing to give, that his star power was a relic of the past. But Clyde refused to back down. He sneered, brandishing a file of photos and old letters that threatened to tarnish the last shred of Maxwell's dignity. Cornered, Maxwell braced himself for the blow. Suddenly, headlights washed over them. A car screeched to a halt. Reed leaped out, his eyes blazing with concern. He had read a cryptic voicemail left by Maxwell, realized something was horribly wrong, and rushed to the address Maxwell had mentioned in hushed tones. Reed squared off against Clyde, demanding he leave Maxwell alone. Clyde smirked, sizing up Reed's expensive suit and the anxious determination burning in his gaze. Sensing an opportunity, Clyde tried to extort money from Reed as well, threatening to ruin Maxwell's already fragile reputation. Reed refused to bow, though he trembled inside. He stared Clyde down, demanding that he hand over the incriminating material. The tension was nearly unbearable as Clyde weighed his options. Maxwell stood behind Reed, astonished at the younger man's courage. Finally, Clyde tossed the file to the ground and spat a string of curses, vowing revenge before disappearing into the night. Maxwell collapsed, his legs buckling from the weight of relief. Reed hurried to support him, carefully retrieving the abandoned documents. In the aftermath, Reed discovered that the documents contained fragments of Maxwell's troubled history family disagreements, moments of poor judgment, relationships strained by the bright lights of stardom. Yet nothing warranted shame or blackmail. If anything, the letters revealed a man struggling to reconcile his fame with his desire for a genuine life. Deeply moved, Reed promised Maxwell he would keep these secrets safe. That night, Maxwell shed tears of gratitude and sorrow, free from Clyde's grip but still burdened by the memories that haunted him. In the weeks that followed, Reed carefully helped Maxwell rebuild his life. They found a small apartment for Maxwell in a quiet neighborhood near West Hollywood. Maxwell liked the area's unassuming charm, humble coffee shops, family-owned diners, and less tourist traffic. Every morning, Reed would stop by before heading to his corporate headquarters, offering a smile or a bag of groceries, perhaps both. The two formed a daily routine that became a lifeline for Maxwell, reinforcing the idea that he was no longer alone. Meanwhile, Reed's company slowly recovered from the data breach. His investors remained wary, but the crisis had passed. Nonetheless, a new problem emerged. Board members demanded Reed refocus on profit margins and abandon his philanthropic excursions. For the first time in years, Reed felt torn. He had built his empire to help people, to create solutions that simplified financial tasks. But that grand vision had become mired in the chase for higher returns and relentless expansion. Maxwell's predicament reminded Reed that real help began on a personal level, not with press releases and tax-deductible donations. An even greater challenge arrived in the form of a major competitor launching a hostile takeover attempt. Whispers of corporate espionage echoed through the corridors, and Reed's most trusted advisor discovered that several shareholders were prepared to sell their stakes for a quick profit. The tension peaked during a high-stakes meeting where legal teams and public relations experts converged. In that moment, Reed felt the weight of the entire empire on his shoulders. He realized that if he lost control of his company, he would lose the very platform through which he hoped to fund good causes. Desperate for a lifeline, Reed considered appealing to venture capitalists, but each conversation ended with a cold reminder of financial returns trumping social responsibility. Late into one night, he recalled Maxwell's tales of the Hollywood system, glamour on the surface, heartbreak underneath. In a surge of inspiration, Reed decided to channel the grit that Maxwell had once shown when forging his Hollywood path. He reached out to an old family friend, Elise Montes, who had been a top producer at Warner Bros. Studios. Though she was not a tech investor, her knowledge of negotiation and high-stakes deals was unparalleled. Elise agreed to help craft a plan to protect Reed's company from the looming takeover. Weeks of clandestine meetings followed, held in quiet corners of the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel and late-night sessions in Reed's office. Elise brought in a top-tier negotiation coach, while Maxwell contributed moral support, reminding Reed to ground every decision in the values he cherished. Bit by bit, they assembled a coalition of shareholders who believed in Reed's long-term vision. Some were persuaded by a personal meeting with Maxwell, who shared how Reed's altruism had rescued him. Others were swayed by Reed's reputation as an ethical entrepreneur. By the time the competitor initiated the takeover, Reed's defenses were stronger than anyone had imagined. During those tense days, Maxwell found himself revisiting his old haunts in Hollywood, trying to chase away lingering ghosts. At Musso and Frank Grill, a famed restaurant along Hollywood Boulevard, he sipped a quiet cup of tea, remembering the days when he'd been followed by paparazzi. Instead of feeling bitterness, he found a gentle peace washing over him, nourished by the knowledge that he wasn't alone. He even recognized a face or two, older servers who recalled the golden years. They greeted him with genuine warmth, sparking within Maxwell a renewed sense of belonging. Just when all seemed lost, Maxwell surprised Reed by requesting to attend one of the critical shareholder meetings. Reed, confused but trusting his friend, agreed. Maxwell arrived, dressed in a simple but elegant suit, a lingering echo of Hollywood's golden era. The hush in the boardroom was palpable as Maxwell stepped forward to share a heartfelt testimony of Reed's character. He spoke eloquently about how Reed had saved him from a life of destitution. Though Maxwell did not reveal his own storied past as a Hollywood icon, his words carried the warmth and sincerity of someone who had experienced Reed's kindness firsthand. Emboldened by Maxwell's speech, Reed delivered a rousing presentation of his vision for the company's future. He reminded everyone why the business had been established in the first place: to empower small enterprises and everyday people. Profits were important, but not at the cost of losing the soul that defined the company. Moved by the combined passion of Maxwell's endorsement and Reed's sincerity, the wavering shareholders reconsidered. One by one, they voiced their support, deflating the competitor's takeover plan. News of the dramatic boardroom victory spread throughout financial circles, painting Reed as a principled leader. His stock soared once again. Freed from immediate threats, Reed poured more resources into community programs, including one specifically designed to aid struggling artists and aging performers. He named it the Compton Initiative, a subtle tribute to Maxwell's resilience. Maxwell, for his part, felt a renewed sense of purpose. He began volunteering with the program, mentoring aspiring actors who faced rejection and uncertainty. In time, Maxwell's identity as a former Hollywood star slowly came to light. An old friend recognized him at a charity event, and the press soon latched onto the story of a once glittering icon found living in obscurity. But the narrative took a surprisingly positive spin. Tabloids highlighted Maxwell's humility, praising his choice to give back rather than wallow in regrets. The public, drawn by a wave of nostalgia for his classic films, rallied around him. It was a redemption arc that only the strangest twists of fate could produce. Amid all the renewed attention, Maxwell received an invitation to a retrospective film festival honoring the golden age of Hollywood. The organizers wanted him to appear as a surprise guest. Nervous but excited, he accepted, seeing it as a chance to rekindle old joys and possibly find closure for the painful chapters of his life. Reed accompanied him for moral support, standing quietly off to the side as cameras flashed and fans clamored for autographs. Maxwell's name once again graced the marquee, reminding him of the glittering days he had left behind. Before the main event, Maxwell was interviewed by a renowned film historian who specialized in documenting Hollywood's forgotten legends. Through gentle but probing questions, the historian guided Maxwell into revealing key moments from his past, his first screen test, the night he won a minor award at Grauman's Chinese Theatre, and the heartbreak that befell him when the studios turned their backs. Tears welled in Maxwell's eyes, but they were tears of catharsis. The interviewer thanked him, remarking that his story would serve as an inspiration for generations to come. Backstage at the festival, Reed overheard two younger actors whispering about Maxwell, expressing awe at his resilience. They confessed that they often felt overshadowed in a ruthless industry. Reed smiled, realizing that Maxwell had found a new calling to guide and comfort those traveling the same rocky path he once did. Quietly, Reed resolved to expand the Compton Initiative's mission to include mentorship programs for aspiring performers, believing that bridging the gap between legends and newcomers could spark hope in an often lonely world. The festival venue, the historic TCL Chinese Theatre, dazzled with bright lights and the hum of anticipation. Maxwell took a moment to gaze at the theatre's iconic facade, recalling the many premieres he had once attended here under very different circumstances. Waves of bittersweet nostalgia washed over him. In his heart, he felt a surge of gratitude for having survived the storms that once threatened to bury him. Reed stood at his side, marveling at how a random act of kindness had led both of them to this extraordinary juncture. When it came time for Maxwell to be introduced on stage, the spotlight illuminated his silver hair and dignified stance. The crowd, initially uncertain of who might appear, rose to its feet when they recognized the once glamorous star. Maxwell's voice trembled as he thanked them for their unwavering support. Then, with quiet reverence, he spoke of the many unknown faces he had met throughout his journey, faces like Reed, who reminded him that compassion could be found even in the darkest corners of life. Applause thundered, and some among the audience openly wept. During the festival, Maxwell stepped onto the stage to a roaring crowd. Clips of his classic roles played on a massive screen behind him. Emotions surged through him: pride, regret, gratitude, and relief, all intermixed. He saw that his legacy was not irredeemable. The public still cherished what he had once given them. As he addressed the crowd, Maxwell thanked everyone who had stuck by him and those who had welcomed him back. Then, in a poignant moment that hushed the auditorium, he thanked the man who taught him that kindness still flourished in the world, Reed Dempsey. Thunderous applause erupted, and tearful fans reached out to him. Maxwell's comeback began in earnest, with small cameo offers and invitations to public appearances flooding in. Though the spark of youth was gone, his dignity and grace commanded respect. He seized each opportunity with humility, channeling any extra earnings into philanthropic causes. His bond with Reed remained unbreakable. They dined together frequently, reminiscing about the day they first met on that lonely street. Whenever Maxwell reminisced, a thoughtful smile crossed his weathered face. He had never imagined that losing everything would lead him to find what truly mattered. A year later, the Compton Initiative flourished. Reed's company thrived, guided by a moral compass that refused to sacrifice compassion for profit. Maxwell's saga became a source of inspiration for countless individuals struggling to find their path. Though not every twist of fate garnered headlines, the effect on those it touched was unmistakable. People whispered the story in coffee shops, repeated it in small-town theaters, and cited it as a testament to the power of second chances. Meanwhile, in the background, dark forces the same that had nearly devoured Maxwell found themselves thwarted by the unstoppable momentum of hope. One day, as Maxwell sorted through fan letters at his apartment, a familiar face materialized at his door, Clyde Bellingham. However, this time, Clyde appeared disheveled and defeated. His malevolent swagger was gone, replaced by a trembling desperation reminiscent of Maxwell's own condition when Reed first met him. A scandal had engulfed Clyde's shady dealings, leaving him penniless and hunted. With nowhere else to turn, Clyde groveled for forgiveness, tears of humiliation staining his cheeks. Maxwell stood stunned, wrestling with a complex blend of anger and empathy. Karma had indeed come full circle. Just as Maxwell had once been cornered and exploited, now Clyde found himself vulnerable. Reed, who had accompanied Maxwell that afternoon, arrived to see Clyde prostrate on the floor. Though both men had every right to reject him, Maxwell's heart could not condone cruelty, even toward a villain. Surprising everyone, Maxwell chose to show him mercy, much as Reed had shown mercy to him. He called an ambulance for Clyde when it became clear he was unwell, ensuring the man received proper medical attention. This act of compassion marked the final stroke of karmic retribution, a potent reminder that second chances often arrive in unexpected forms. Life moved on. Maxwell continued to build a quiet but fulfilling existence, giving occasional interviews and making rare public appearances. Reed's enterprise soared to new heights, celebrated by business journals for its ethical leadership. The two friends remained confidants, forging a bond that transcended fame, fortune, or age. Whenever they found a moment to reflect, they returned to that fundamental truth. A single act of kindness can alter the course of someone's life forever. In the wake of Clyde's sudden downfall, word spread throughout the industry that even the most manipulative figures could not outpace their own misdeeds indefinitely. Reed watched as investors, once preoccupied with shallow gains, began to see the lasting value in integrity. Some, humbled by Clyde's example, reached out to Reed to commend him for standing by his principles. Maxwell, hearing whispers of this shift, felt a renewed conviction that empathy and honesty were not liabilities but strengths, capable of changing even the most callous hearts. Soon, Maxwell received an invitation to speak on a panel at the American Film Institute, focusing on the theme of resilience. He hesitated at first, unsure whether his once disgraced name could carry enough weight to inspire. But Reed urged him forward, reminding him that every scar told a story of survival. Standing at the podium, Maxwell shared his life's ups and downs without flinching from the painful truths. Students and fellow artists, some on the brink of giving up their dreams, clung to his words like a lifeline. Applause thundered at the end, as many lined up to ask for his guidance. Energized by the response, Maxwell decided to host monthly workshops through the Compton Initiative, partnering with small acting schools around Los Angeles. Reed provided funding and logistical support, ensuring that aspiring performers and screenwriters could attend for free. Word traveled quickly through social media, spurring a wave of hopeful artists to come seek both mentorship and community. The city buzzed with the improbable tale of an aging star's comeback, financed by a self-made millionaire who asked nothing in return except that hope be kept alive. Beyond Hollywood, Reed's philanthropic endeavors caught the attention of entrepreneurs nationwide. Tech conference invitations poured in, asking him to share how he balanced moral responsibility with corporate success. Each time, Reed told the story of the night he met Maxwell, the stranger who reminded him of humanity's silent struggles. Impressed, many in the tech world began to question their own priorities. Partnerships formed to develop apps that connected volunteers with elderly citizens in need, a direct homage to the encounter that started it all. Reed's empire, once threatened by takeover, evolved into a model of conscientious innovation. Meanwhile, Maxwell embraced his growing role as a public figure with humility. He appeared in a documentary about once famous stars who had fallen on hard times, giving raw, vulnerable interviews that highlighted both the glamour and the harsh realities of the industry. This stark honesty resonated with audiences. The documentary, screened at the Sundance Film Festival, won a special award for shedding light on Hollywood's less visible casualties. Maxwell, quietly proud, felt he had finally done justice to all who had been tossed aside by a system obsessed with the next big thing. Back in Los Angeles, Reed found himself invited to speak at a prestigious charity gala at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The event brimmed with celebrities, corporate moguls, and politicians. Taking the stage, Reed recounted how a small gesture, a simple meal for a stranger, unleashed a domino effect of transformations. Mid-speech, Reed spotted Maxwell in the crowd, tears glistening in the older man's eyes, as he recognized the profound shift in how the world now perceived him, not as a has-been star, but as a beacon of fortitude. A thunderous standing ovation followed, uniting both men in an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Despite these triumphs, life did not suddenly become perfect. Maxwell sometimes woke from nightmares of betrayal and hardship, recalling the days he slept on cold sidewalks. Reed had stressful nights grappling with new regulatory hurdles and never-ending board expectations. Yet when doubt threatened to consume them, they drew strength from the bond they shared, reminding each other how far they had come. Over late-night phone calls, they would recount the strangest blessings that had emerged from pain, each conversation reinforcing their conviction that hope was worth any risk. Even the press, typically ravenous for scandal, seemed captivated by the story of generosity and redemption. Gossip columns that once feasted on Maxwell's downfall now praised the partnership between an unassuming millionaire and a forgotten star. People from around the world felt inspired to perform their own small acts of kindness, paying tribute to the tale that had unified two vastly different men. Nobody could have predicted the events that stemmed from a simple meal shared in a dimly lit cafe, but it became a beacon of hope amid a world too often overshadowed by cynicism. And so the story drew to its close, yet in every ending resides the seed of a new beginning. Maxwell cherished every remaining day, aware that time was precious and fleeting. He lived with renewed purpose, thankful for the gift of a second chance. Reed, too, discovered that success was not merely about numbers and ambition. True success blossomed from empathy, from the willingness to see the face of a stranger and embrace their struggles as your own. Their story testified to the power of compassion to shatter barriers and reunite us with what truly matters, our shared humanity. In the annals of Hollywood's golden legacy, Maxwell Compton's name would forever bear an asterisk, the legend who once vanished but returned, guided by a selfless act from a modern-day Samaritan. Late at night sometimes, Reed would reflect on that chilly evening in Beverly Hills when he first encountered the elderly stranger. He would smile, recalling how an impulsive gesture of compassion sparked a miraculous chain of events, moments of danger and redemption, heartache and healing leading to ultimate karmic retribution. In the hush of his office, amidst the glowing city lights, Reed often wondered how many other stars had fallen into the shadows, their stories untold and their hearts unseen. And each time, he resolved to keep his heart open, ready to lend a hand when fate next offered him the chance. Life, after all, was most beautiful when shared, especially with those we least expected to find along the way. Thank you for joining us on this extraordinary journey of compassion, redemption, and the power of fate. As Reed, Dempsey, and Maxwell Compton have shown, a single act of kindness can spark an astonishing chain reaction, one that revives forgotten dreams and restores lost hope. Their story is a profound reminder that empathy, resilience, and humility have a place in a world often dazzled by fortune and fame. If this tale moved you, please like and share so others can discover its message. And if you want more stories of hidden truths and human triumph, be sure to subscribe. Remember, you hold the power to change a life sometimes with nothing more than simple kindness. Stay tuned for our next video, where more unforgettable tales await.